Okay, so the topic of discussion today is wait, let me introduce myself. Hi, my name is Katie Valentine, and today I will be talking about the unethicalness of captivity zones like SeaWorld theme parks, such and such. So, my strong belief is that SeaWorld is an unethical theme park to which animals actively get exploited and abused. So, we see this with the first documentary we see, which Blackfish shows some clips.
Now, Tillicum is spending a great deal of time by himself and basically floating lifeless in a pool.
3 hours now, and he hasn't moved.
Okay, so with these clips, you can clearly see that there is abuse going on. It may not be abuse from direct trainers, but it's abuse from the environment. A lot of these animals get exploited, and we see this with the fighting of these animals.
In certain seasons, that Tillicum would be covered head to toe with rakes. Rakes are teeth on teeth and raking the skin, and from head to toe you could see blood and you could see scratches, and he would just be raked up.
Both females would gang up.
And then once again, we see the exploitativeness or whatever with having to put on these performances. So Blackfish allows us to see at a deeper level with professionals allowing us to give us the full point of view. We see this again with the folded fin argument, where a lot of the time SeaWorld workers were being told that it was normal and that it was normalized in the real world. Real world being outside of the captivity zone. A lot of these workers were being told fake facts, so their moral would just allow these exploitive behaviors to continue going. We see scientists in Blackfish actively argue this and be like, hey, this is not actually true. So, even the way that these orcas got there was just completely insane. A lot of them got captive, or sorry, what is it called? They got basically stolen, kidnapped. And a lot of the main issue I would say with this would specifically be that these animals run in packs. They're like wolves. They're families. They don't just go by themselves. It's very rare that an orca is by itself. So, the fact that these scientists highlight that idea that, hey, this is not their normal environment already sends off a huge red flag for the unethicalness of SeaWorld. Another rhetorical advice, that was ethos. Another rhetorical advice used was pathos, which the directors of this movie use cries of the orca to show true emotion and rawness of the orcas. The orcas show rawness with crying after their babies get kidnapped from them. We see this with the orcas in the captivity zone. Once after they have babies, their babies get removed from them and they're just straight up crying. So I think this is as close as it gets to human, honestly, because these things, I don't even call them, these things of just like the emotion of your baby being stolen is far much more than just an animal thing. These orcas are very similar to humans. They have they have a language. They have a language within they talk. They also have things like intellectualness with each other. And so they are able to feel emotion. So these orcas are actively being kind of shut down a lot. And we see this even with a human environment. What happens when a human gets shut down? It ultimately just leads to disaster, and it just leads to far more trauma than good. Okay, so now going more into depth with the Blackfish documentary, and I think that it is completely important that we highlight main facts on this. This includes things like how we all got started here. So the movie Blackfish kind of centers more on the orca named Tillicum. Tillicum is an orca that expresses aggressive behavior back to back. So something that makes Tillicum very interesting too was his size. I think a lot of people were attracted to his size, but more on that later. Tillicum is an orca that had expressed extreme aggressive behavior. He was captured near Iceland. Cold. He was captured near Iceland and separated from his family. Already a red flag, and that already suggests aggressive behavior in the future. Because of his captivity, I think he was put in, I think it was called Sealand. If I can find it, I'll put it here. It was Sealand, and he was put in with 2 other females. The problem with Sealand was not, well, it was everything. Sealand was very small. It was just like a pool in the bay. Like, it wasn't even, I think it was in Florida, and the problem with the pool was that it didn't go too deep and it was very small. I mean, it was probably just like, I can't even measure it. It was definitely not big enough for these orcas, for 3 orcas. Orcas are probably like the size of like 2 buses or something like that. So they would be put there during the day while they're doing their shows, doing their little freaking flips or whatever. And while they're doing their flips, something that's also very interesting to highlight is the fact that they're trainers. These trainers were not necessarily aware of the possible risk of working with orcas. So that is something to highlight and something to take note about. So a lot of these workers, some of them were professional swimmers. Some of them were very professional swimmers, so this was kind of like a voluntary job. Another problem with the captivity thing was that when they were put inside for bedtime, these orcas were kind of crammed in this little spot. And Tillicum was not an average orca. He was probably one of the biggest orcas to man knowledge, because he was captive, so we knew his size and we knew his weight. He was definitely not a small orca. He definitely took up probably twice the size of an orca, twice the size of an average orca. And so mind you, he was probably kind of 2 orcas, and he had 2 other orcas. These 2 other orcas were females, and they were very, very, very aggressive. They ended up leading into a lot of fights, and too often, Tillicum was kind of ganged up on, and it just led into stress and trauma from the captivity. And this was hard because orcas are highlighted as social animals, so the fact that they're just so constantly under stress and constantly being abused, these orcas didn't know how to manage their stress, so they just started taking it out on each other, and it just led to bad after bad after bad. So, yeah. More analyzation on Blackfish. We continuously see back-to-back injuries by Tilikum or fellow orcas. One that I think stood out was the death of the trainer named Dawn Brunshaw. I think I didn't say her name right. But Dawn, in 2010, had an incident involving Tilikum. This incident consisted of her kind of, she was a little frustrated that the show before her had a lot of errors, and so she felt like she had to impress the SeaWorld attendee. So what she did was she kind of went all out. She went all out. She was kind of pushing the orca. And one thing orcas do note of is when the food's running out. So she was pushing the orca. She was pushing Tilikum. And this was also being recorded, which is also why this makes this incident very interesting. So in this incident, we see the shift of Tilikum going from playful and kind of supporting his trainer to aggressiveness. So one thing to take note of was Tilikum had that shift. And any orca, any wild animal can be unpredictable. Even a human can be unpredictable. So if a human can be unpredictable, what makes you think that an animal is not? Unfortunately, we tend to forget that these animals are wild animals. When this shift happens, you can see almost an aggressiveness spark up in Tilikum. The aggressiveness kind of just led to the ultimate death of her, which is when she gets into the pool and she begins to swim with him, and he gets grasp of her arm and drags her down. Mind you, there was an audience watching this, so these people are probably traumatized as much as it can get as traumatizing. Before the other trainer can see what's going on, she's dead. So she dies in that pool. And something that's very interesting is now I think organization that typically works with things like this is beginning to sue SeaWorld, because now they cut it on camera. Now it's, I guess, more easy to see and analyze it. But the problem with this is that Dawn had her hair down in a ponytail similar to mine, and she had her hair down. So SeaWorld made the argument that he grasped onto her hair and she drowned. SeaWorld won the case, or the assumption or the rumors or whatever. And honestly, I think that was just kind of a lot of the trainers' last straw. They post Dawn's death, a lot of them expressed how they themselves realized how aggressive orcas can be. It's not their fault. It's not the orcas' fault. It's the circumstances that they are in.
Okay, now moving on to my personal experience at SeaWorld. One thing I took note of was definitely the decline of people there. I remember, because I am a San Diegan from birth, that I remember going to SeaWorld a lot and there being a lot of people. Maybe because we went during a weekday, that there were just less people. But I also took note of the outdated aquariums. So I'll put things that I took pictures of here. I think that really kind of set the stone for me, because it was one of the first things I saw, and it kind of just creeped me out a little bit, because after seeing Blackfish, I understood that a lot of these animals are being exploited for human gain, to be honest, humans' laughter, humans' entertainment purposes. But after seeing that, I was just kind of oh my god, these animals are living here for the rest of their lives. Before, SeaWorld used to make the arguments that they're saving these animals, but I don't think you're saving them when the aquarium thingy is outdated, when I can see rust in the water. It was just kind of sad. No, not kind of, it was very sad. It was kind of damn, I want to rescue you, but I can't. Does that make sense? Because I also had the opportunity to go to the orca show, which, mind you, they are still doing orca shows, which is insane. These orcas are still trained. And I also took pictures of their containment or whatever, their captivity zone or exhibit. And that thing is as small as I don't even know, that thing is small. It only goes I would say 30 to 40 feet underground. And that thing is small. Also, I know dolphins were not mentioned in Blackfish, but the dolphins had such a small exhibit. It is insane. I could not wrap my head around it. Like, they were getting fed. I was there while they were getting fed. I was there while they were getting fed, and I noticed quickly that it was small. I was like, I thought that maybe like in Blackfish that they were being a little like, like a little extra because, they're trying to get views or whatever. But when you see that movie, Blackfish, and then you go in person to actually see what they're talking about, you realize very quickly that they're not messing around, that they're being truthfully honest to the best of their ability. I think the only difference though between then and now and what's worse now is that a lot of that movie's already released. And second, because of SeaWorld's decline in attendee or a decline in people just going point blank, they're not updating as much as they need to be. Like, these are, that's what I call them, humans. These are lives. Like, these aren't just like normal, they're not just objects, they're not just like this, like they're not just this. They're real objects. Like, it's more than just, just leave them in the pool. Like, what? These things need to be fed. These things have waste. These things reproduce. Like, it's just a lot. So I think it was kind of like, going back to the show, sorry. In the show, they still train these orcas. Like, they still exploit them. And there was, I think, what I counted, there was 5 orcas. There was, I think, a huge one and such and such. And I was just kind of like, wow. Like, the orca was still splashing and everything. One thing I noticed too, though, there was no trainers in the water. So that's probably because SeaWorld does not want to get sued again. Right. Anyways, so I think that was pretty, from my personal first point of view, it kind of set the stone for me, and it kind of set the tone of, wow, if SeaWorld wants to claim that they're rescuing these animals, there needs to be a probation period where you have like 3 months with them or however long it takes, and then you return them back to where they need to go. Like, if it's just not fair, like, it's not, let me put this into crazy statements. A person that commits a crime, which mind you, these orcas have never committed crimes, they just got put there by unluckiness. A person that commits a crime typically knows when they're going to get out, unless it's like a crazy crime and they get the death penalty or they get life. They know when they're going to get out. These orcas, they're never getting out. They are prisoners for life. And they're constantly being exploited as workers, to which these orcas were never born to do that. These orcas were never, maybe if they were breeded there, but that still doesn't excuse that. It is the epitome of animal abuse, and just seeing it in person with the disgusting enclosures, B, the overworking of these animals, and C, just knowing deep down that these orcas are just sad and that they have to go through abuse. Another thing that I would like to connect with Blackfish and what I saw in person was the shifted fin. So a lot of the times SeaWorld workers were told that was normal, and they would obviously tell the people that asked them, why is their fin like that? Well, they would be like, well, it's normal, like it happens a lot in the wild. There's only about 1% of orcas that actually have a sideways fin, and at SeaWorld, mainly all of them had a shifted fin. And that fin kind of signifies like the abuse and etc. Like, it just signifies that they're getting exploited. Like, it's their mood. So I think it's just the first-hand view of just orca captivity and just in general animal captivity is just insane. I don't even know why we've gotten to a point as a society where we still think that's okay. But overall, I just strongly believe that orcas have gotten to a point where they are just constantly being exploited, and they can't speak for themselves. they can act for themselves, and that's clearly been proven many times, but they cannot speak for themselves, and it just shows the unethicalness of SeaWorld, of the captivity. They know that the orcas can't say anything. They know that these orcas can't say that they're sad, and they take advantage of that. So I think that clearly SeaWorld is an unethical way of entertainment to humans. If SeaWorld really had pure intentions, their mission of saving these animals should be put on probation period. Like, oh, you only have such and such months. And then you have to release them again. There should not be you're here for the rest of your life. That's just insanity. It causes these orcas to reach insanity. And we see this even today, like with a lot of prisoners reaching insanity, because that's just all they do. A lot of people in asylums, they reach insanity even more because there's just nothing to do. I mean, you just constantly just doing the same thing. I would like to close this by saying there's just so much that we don't see, and maybe because we don't work there, but that does not mean that we should kind of turn the blind eye. I think that it's important for us to take note of that these orcas are being captive, and it's completely unethical for SeaWorld to only see this as a personal gain rather than just like letting your conscience, like, I can't believe people would let that happen, but just let go of that and just release those orcas, man, and release these animals that can live outside of SeaWorld. Thank you.